So, morning everyone. My name's Shane Young, Head of Commercial Partnerships at Barnsley Modern Chamber. Thank you for joining us this morning. It's great to see you all. Today's webinar is Getting More from the Public Sector, and we'll be hearing from speakers Gillian Askew, Jimmy Brannigan and Chris Arnold. So I'll just go into a little bit of detail about the speakers so you know who is in charge today. Gillian is a 26-year-long procurement professional. I nearly said 26 years old then, Gillian. Gillian is a 26-year-long procurement professional, a small business owner and co-founder of Go for Growth. Gillian has worked in both private and public sectors and has been helping smaller organisations across all sectors to enter and grow in the public sector for many years. Moving on to Jimmy. Jimmy is the director of Net Positive Futures and a partner on the Go for Growth programme. He supports organisations on the understanding and delivery of social value and sustainability, specifically engaging with the public sector to improve opportunities for SMEs and VCSEs to secure contracts. And finally, we've got Chris. Chris, delighted to have you with us this morning. Chris is the Head of Strategic Procurement and Contract Management at Barnsley Council. Part of his role is he's involved in the future development of the council's commercial strategy and also acts as the lead on social value. So with this in mind and with the three speakers, I'm sure you're in capable hands on this specific topic this morning. So before I pass over to Gillian to make a start, I'd like to let you know that we're going to be recording this webinar and we're going to be sending it out through our chamber network afterwards, YouTube, social media, etc., etc. We'll also be sending you guys a copy as well. So before I pass on to Gillian, I'm going to be muting all participants. However, we do want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you've got any questions, please pop them in the conversation chat box and we can pick them up as we go, or you can raise your digital hand if you've got a burning question and we can kind of come straight to you. So with that in mind, I'm now going to pass over to Gillian, who will make a start. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for that, Shane. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some nods. That's good. Okay, thank you for joining us today, everybody. I appreciate you all taking some time out of your what will be no doubt very busy calendars. The order of events today, in a second, I'm going to hand over to Chris and he's going to talk you through what Barnsley Council are doing around social value and economic development. And then I'm going to talk just really briefly a little bit about who Go for Growth are, the aims and ambitions of the programme, and a little bit about who it's for and why it exists. And then my colleague Jimmy is going to give us a demonstration of the Go for Growth programme. So if a business joined the programme, what you would see and do. And then we'll finish up with some case studies of businesses who are in the programme currently and the difference that the programme is making to them. All the way through, as Shane says, if there's a burning question that you want to ask, do raise your digital hand, do put questions on the chat. If there's something that we can't answer today, we'll definitely take it away and come back to people. And so, Chris, I'll hand over to you if that's all right.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Morning, everybody. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Really, this morning, I just want to cover off. I've got literally just 4 slides in probably about 10 minutes. Just want to share where we are in terms of our social value journey, if you like, and also how that links in with supplier engagement. So, just by way of the start, I think it's fair to say if social value were a race, I think Barnsley Council were a bit slow out of the blocks when it came to social value initially. As you can see there on the slide, we didn't actually get to the point where we had our first formal policy until March 2019. But I think the positive thing was that once we got the policy developed, we wanted to do it properly. We didn't want to fall into the trap that we'd seen with maybe other local authorities who develop a policy, tick that box and then don't do anything actively with it. We were determined not to do that, which is why I developed this making it real theme, if you like. We wanted to ensure that we embedded social value properly into our commercial decision making, into our process, and that's what we've done. As you can see there on the slide, we've also made a couple of commitments. So we've got a corporate performance indicator to say that 65% of our expenditure will be with local suppliers, which is quite ambitious. I have to make a confession that we're not quite achieving that target yet, but At least we've got it as a corporate ambition. And the other thing that we've done in the last 12 months is that we've made a commitment to consider social value in all of our procurement tenders that have got a value of more than £70,000 in contract value. The relevance of that threshold is that that's the threshold at which procurement tenders are the responsibility of the central team under my control. So obviously that gives us a bit more of a consistent approach to it. One of the questions that you might want to understand in terms of social value and local suppliers is what's our definition of local? Now, as far as we're concerned at Barnsley, a local supplier is anybody within a Barnsley postcode. So the way that we define local is really quite strict and makes it harder for us because it is truly local. You do see some other local authorities claiming local spend when actually it's regional. So it's a bit easier to achieve. But for us, local is truly local to Barnsley. We're currently dealing with about 300 local suppliers, but we've probably got the capacity to do more than that. And at the moment, we're not achieving that 65%, but we are around the late 50s. So more than half of our expenditure is going to local suppliers. Just moving on to the next slide, please, Jill. I think that's everything from that one. So with that in mind and with that commitment, it was important that we were in a position where we could do a good job on social value. So one of the things that we've developed over the last 2 years is a real effort to make sure that we've got the required systems and solutions in place to enable us to do a good job. So what we've done is we've invested in systems and partners that allow us now to procure and contract manage the social value element within our procurement events. So right through the full commercial cycle and right through to post-award activity as well in terms of project management as well. So we're constantly looking at how we can improve via the systems and data that we have. The overall strategy that I've got, if you like, is to improve our in-house capability and our knowledge on social value. Obviously, a relatively new thing for us in the last 2 or 3 years. So what we want to do is build our in-house capability so that we're more self-sufficient going forward. Probably the final thing just to mention on this particular slide there is that there is mention of sustainability, and probably an important point as we go forward is the decarbonisation agenda. That's becoming front and centre of everything now, and I really expect that to accelerate over the coming months as we've got our 0, 40, 45 decarbonisation targets as an authority. So I really expect that to become front and centre, as I say, and it'll be interesting to hear from you guys in your organisations how you're responding to that as well. Next slide, please, Jill. So I just detailed in that previous slide about how we're gearing up internally to meet social value and local expenditure attached to that. But the purpose of this slide really is to talk about the engagement with the market, because it really only works if you've got both sides of the coin working together. When I say that, I mean buyer and seller. You've got to get them both into the same space, if you like, when it comes to social value. So some of the things that I just put on this slide here are a couple of examples where I think we've improved our market engagement over the last couple of years. We're doing a lot of local area commissioning, local budgets, local decision making, which leads itself to usage of local suppliers. I think that's a model that's been really successful, and I think other authorities are looking to replicate. I like to think that from a procurement perspective, we've changed our approach to do a lot of early investment in the process, so pre-market engagement, trying to learn more from the market before you really get into the guts of a procurement event. Now, in order to get good at that, you have to get a lot better at your planning and get everything lined up. I do think we've got further improvement to make on that, but certainly I'm seeing more and more pre-market engagement as part of the procurement process, and I think that's a good thing. But I think in terms of the engagement with the market, I think this third and final point on this particular slide is the really interesting one, because this is where we've been working with Jimmy, Net Positive Futures, where we're rolling out a supplier engagement tool, and this is kind of over the last few months, which is it's a free of charge self-assessment tool for the supply base, where basically, and Jimmy can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but something like a 45-minute self-assessment is what it entails for a supplier. And then it generates basically an action plan for that organisation, which if you follow it and you implement it, makes you more social value enabled, if you like. Now, that's great for that organisation, but why is it great for me as the buyer? Well, I think what it means for me and the benefit that I'm looking to get out of it, and this is why we at the authority fund the solution, is that if we're making more and more social value demands with the documentation, I think it's only right that we help the market educate itself and get better in that respect, so that you're enabled to give a positive response to these areas when we send tenders out. So we'll get better responses from you guys because you'll be more social value enabled, you'll score better in tenders, and then hopefully that'll enable you to win more business, and we'll get the social value outputs from contracts that we're after. I think that's everything on that one. Just on to the final slide then, Jill, I think. So I think what I've gone through so far is the journey of where we started, where we're up to. This next slide is really just outlining where we're going to go next. So this takes us to the present time, really. So I'm just in the process of trying to set the targets for 21-22 in terms of local spend. I wanting to change the target setting and the reporting parameters around local spend. I want to make it more about actual money and the number of suppliers that we use. You recall from the previous slide, it was all about percentages, but I want it to be about real expenditure and the number of suppliers we engage with, which I think is more meaningful. The other thing that we've been doing, and we're looking to launch in the next couple of months, is a new kind of contract and supplier relationship methodology and framework, council-wide as well. This is something we've been working on for a good 12 months. And I think whilst better commercial management's a good thing via contract management, the other important aspect of this is about improving our supplier relationships and about having more regular and structured engagement with our suppliers. I think it's fair to say, and it's not right, but it's been a factor about in the last 3 to 4 years, the main engagement with the supplier is actually when you're running a tender. But for me, it's about that ongoing development, the conversations, the opportunities, tackling the issues that happen and occur in between those tender opportunities. It's about the ongoing commercial relationship, and we need to do more of that. So that's something that we're aiming for. And then I think by way of leading to the next presentation, when we move on to Jill, one of the things that we're looking to do is adopt the Go for Growth solution. The reason, from a buyer's perspective, is that we need to see more choice and more competition coming through when we're sending out tenders. So hopefully, that will help in getting more suppliers from the market interested in bidding for public sector contracts, which is what we want. And with that in mind, obviously we're constantly looking at our processes, trying to make us easier to do business with, trying to make our processes and our systems easier to engage with, and hopefully we're on course to do that. But for me, whilst I'm looking for the benefits of that as from a buyer's perspective, I do truly think that if we can get this right and we can get more companies interested in the business that we've got, it's truly a kind of win-win situation for everybody. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. So I think those are the key points that I wanted to cover off. If anyone's made any comments or got any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Chris, thank you for that. If I can just jump in there, we've had a question that's come into the chat box, Chris, from Rona Bywater. And Rona's put in there, in terms of local suppliers, do you include sub-regional organisations? The charity I work for is based in Sheffield, but we work across all of South Yorkshire.
Yeah, in terms of how we gauge it, it's a postcode driven assessment of how we've done it. So to be incorporated as a local supplier within our calculations, as long as some part of an organisational structure has got a Barnsley postcode, so either a head office, an operational depot, or even a regional office, as long as some part of that operation is within the Barnsley postcode, it will get captured as a local supplier, because the way that we regard it is that as long as they're operating within the locality, they're making a contribution to the economy. So that's how we assess it. I don't know if that directly answers the question, but it certainly explains how we assess and report it.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that leads on to kind of the next question, which you may or may not be able to answer really, because I know there's businesses on this call today that aren't just in Barnsley, that they're from across South Yorkshire. And do all local authorities work in the same way when it comes to procurement, when it comes to the tendering process? Or are you not as privy to that information and you just kind of work within the Barnsley remit really? Are you aware of what other local authorities do in the process?
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that. From a Yorkshire and Humber perspective, I can tell you that we're very joined up, a lot more joined up than a lot of other regions within England. Just to outline a couple of things that I do, there's the strategic procurement group for Yorkshire and Humber, which there's 23 authorities across the Yorkshire and Humber region. I'm the deputy chair of that forum. So that ensures that we talk to each other on a 6-weekly basis about all procurement related issues. So we're very joined up from that perspective. We all operate off a common system. So we all operate off one e-procurement system. So you've got consistency of that. In respect of processes and thresholds and things like that, authorities set their own, so they vary a little bit. But I think you can take some comfort in that I think authorities are generally working in a similar way. And Jill might have seen that in her roles with the YPO, etc. But there is a lot of collaboration as well and sharing of best practice. And then on the national level, the Local Government Association work with the National Advisory Group on procurement. I'm a member of that as well. So I do get to see what's happening on a national basis as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. And I think that knowing a lot of the businesses on the call today, that they're probably thinking, how do I see these tenders? Do you know, if they're brand new to it, they're new to the process, they've not done it before, they're not on the circulation list, whatever it may be, how do they find these tenders? Is it appropriate to share that now, or should we come to that at the end after Gillian and Jimmy have spoken?
Well, a lot of our opportunities are generally advertised on Contracts Finder, but I think one of the things that we also need to do when it comes to discussions around Go for Growth and the supplier engagement tool that I talked about previously, and I've talked about this with Jimmy, so he might say something on it later on as well, but it's important that when we're doing that supplier engagement that we don't fall into the trap of just engaging with our incumbent suppliers. It's also about engaging with those that have been successful in the past and those that haven't, and understanding for those that haven't, especially from private sector, why haven't you? Might be a legacy reason from years ago, or there might be a perception of what it's like to deal with an authority, bad experience from the past or whatever. But we need to understand that, because I think the common message that I'm trying to get across here is that surely it's in everyone's best interest to have better engagement. So certainly when I'm talking to Jimmy, we just don't talk about our existing supply base. We talk about the total supply base. And, based on that previous question as well about procurement teams and authorities, when I'm dealing within the SPG regional forum, I think of us as one procurement team. That expertise of 200, 300 procurement professionals, that's quite quite powerful if you harness that knowledge and that experience. And I think we should do the same with suppliers.
Brilliant, thanks, Chris. And I didn't necessarily tell you I was going to ask you loads of questions on the spot, so I apologise for that. But I'll hang back to Gillian now.
No worries, thank you. Thanks, Chris. That was super interesting. I'm really pleased that you could come and tell everybody the kinds of ambitions that you've got, where you're at on the journey and those next steps. I'm going to spend just 5 minutes or so just telling a little bit about who Go for Growth is for and why Go for Growth is here. And some of the things, the challenges that Chris has talked about are the reason that Go for Growth exists. Historically, I think it's been disproportionately harder for smaller organisations or VCSE type organisations or charities, etc., to engage in the competitive process that the public sector inevitably has. And so actually what Go for Growth is trying to do is level that playing field a little bit, identify the issues and the barriers, and then work with businesses to overcome them. So Go for Growth is designed specifically for smaller organisations. So if you've got less than 250 employees and you're turning over less than 41 million, of which, you know, there's a huge business community that sits in that space. Or if you're a voluntary organisation, community-based, a social enterprise or a charity, and you're interested in working, either doing more in the public sector because you're already there, or starting out in the public sector, then Go for Growth is here to try and help that come to fruition. And there's good reasons and less good reasons that an organisation like Go for Growth needs to exist. So I've said already that historically it's been a lot harder, and as Chris has alluded to, part of what public sector are doing is not just engaging with the incumbents, but it's about developing that competitive market. So it's about engaging with people that they haven't yet spoken to and that aren't necessarily visible to public sector organisations. And what we're trying to work out is why are those businesses not engaging with the public sector? What are the things that are really stopping that from happening? What's the issues and barriers that are stopping businesses from being part of these tender processes and building relationships with, you know, public sector procurers like Chris, his team, and others like him in the public sector? And of course, the pandemic has exacerbated all of that economically. If it was tough already in that competitive space, then it's even tougher now. And even as we come out of the other side of COVID-19, then the ripple effect of the pandemic will be with us for a long time yet. And there are some scary stats out there. So we're expecting over 250,000 businesses not to survive, small businesses not to survive the pandemic. And we're expecting 23% are already telling us actually that they've had to reduce their staff numbers, with a further 14% telling us that they'll have to cut staff numbers even further if they're going to survive. And just in Yorkshire in the northeast, 55% of all businesses are reporting a fairly substantial decrease in profit. And so there's never been a better time, I think, for us to try and really develop and simplify and really drive consistency in accessing the public sector. And there are great reasons for doing that too. The public sector is a good and stable market. It will always be here. Just a little under 300 billion a year. There's a huge amount of spend in that market. And currently, the public sector is mandated by 2022 to place 33% of all non-pay spend with small to medium enterprises. And what's been brilliant today is we've heard from Chris that 33% is, you know, a little under half of their ambition, and they're already above that. And there are organisations that are, but actually that's a big playing field of public sector business that's available out there specifically for small to medium enterprises, VCSE sector and charities to go for. And public money is governed, and no one's going to apologise for it being governed. But the governance is also shifting. You know, our exit from the European Union is placing different focuses on how we spend that money in the public sector. So Chris has talked a bit already about social value. public sector is concerned with doing public good, and every penny of every pound that is spent in the public sector has to do the best job that it can do. And so we'll see that regulatory environment shift and mature and develop, and that's really great for small to medium enterprises or VCSEs and charities, because actually what it's doing is making it less about price and more about value, and value being both financial, but also about the role that we do in the marketplace. And so it's all, for me, about the development of local economic landscapes and the ability that we've got to deliver social outcomes when we develop that local economic landscape. Let me just move on a slide. I don't know if anybody is aware of the Sustainable Development Goals at all, but there are a number of Sustainable Development Goals. You can see them on screen, and lots of governments have adopted the SDGs, or you might have heard them called the Global Goals. These goals will really increase in traction in how public sector procure, and the language that's used, and the things that businesses will be able to form as part of their offer outside of the commercial offer. And so I wanted just to make reference to it today. The UK government has also committed to the Sustainable Development Goals, and Go for Growth is aligned with goal number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And the definition of that goal is about promoting sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. And it brings us to the point around local enterprise partnerships and wider regions. So the role that we do in developing local economies in the broadest sense is important. In the wider Leeds City region, for example, the Strategic Economic Plan includes 35,000 additional jobs. The wider Sheffield City region, as Chris talked about a little bit around climate, the wider Sheffield City region wants to be zero carbon. And so we've all got roles to play in enabling those things, but they allow us to form what's important to the buyers, as Chris has talked about, in terms of what they're trying to procure and how businesses can become credible into that process. And so that's a little bit from me around what Go for Growth is, who it's for. We are funded, the final point to say is how it's all funded. We are funded by the public sector. So the organisations that get involved in Go for Growth, they form the funding model. And what that means is that any business that comes into the Go for Growth programme doesn't have to pay for the support or content that it gets. It will be free now, and it will be free to ever. And that was really important to us. I might be a 26-year-long procurement professional, but I'm also a small business owner, and I understand about resources, both fiscal, time and the rest of it. And so we were very clear in Go for Growth that any funding needed to not come from the businesses who we're trying to support. And our job is to take these invisible communities and connect them better with the public sector. And so the businesses that are in the programme get all the benefit without having a cost tag associated to it. Are there any questions before I ask Jimmy just to show us a bit more about what the programme actually looks like? I can't see the chat, Shane, so I don't know if there's anything on there.
No, I'm just having a look for digital hands. There's nothing that's come immediately in, Gillian.
Okay. No worries. I'll stop sharing my screen, Jimmy, and hand over to you.
Can I just chip in for a sec there, Jill, just based on a couple of points that came up?
Of course.
I think there is a point that's come up a couple of times around small businesses and maybe how they're potentially disadvantaged when it comes to trying to win public sector work because, you know, they've got less resource and a smaller bid team. They don't have a dedicated bid team or anything like that. And obviously working with charities, we recognise that, and we've made efforts to provide drop-in sessions for smaller suppliers to actually sit with them and work through how to navigate through our system when tendering. Obviously, we can't help them with the actual commercial bid, but in terms of the mechanics of how to work the system, we've done things like that. And certainly when it comes to charities and that traditional contracting route, or whether or not there's options for going down grant agreements rather than contracts, we've certainly put a lot of effort into that as well. And yeah, kind of just want to get a point to the point that I kind of understand the situation that those companies are in. Like yourself, Jill, you know, and I didn't say at the beginning, but you know, most of my career has been spent in the private sector as well. So 25 years in private sector and 5 in public. So I'm more kind of skewed towards that area myself. And then just the other thing, just to mention very, very quickly, just so everyone's aware, is the green paper on public procurement transformation, for which there's a consultation on at the moment, which we've just responded to on a national and authority basis as well. And the central government have got a lot of ambitions to introduce a lot more flexibility into how public procurement works, and they're trying to replicate more of a private sector methodology, I think. Now that won't come in till 2023, but I think the principles and the ambitions of what they're trying to do are absolutely right, and hopefully that'll bring a lot more flexibility and cut, you know, some of the bureaucracy that's associated with the public sector procurement. Just wanted to get those points in before handing over to Jimmy.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're really good points. You know, if anything that simplifies the procurement processes so that it is ultimately more accessible to all, and that, you know, that there's so many acronyms, isn't there, and phrases around levelling up and building back better and all of that stuff. Anything that actually means that the process is as easy as it can be for any business to join is exactly where we should be going. And like you, Chris, I've spent most of my career trying to take price off the table, because businesses have so much more to offer than just the price. And typically we've seen in tenders that they're very heavily price weighted. And so what the green paper and actually public sector, you know, is trying to do is to buy the sum of all of its parts from a business, you know, everything that business does in terms of the value add. So yeah, it's good points, really good points. Thank you. Let me stop sharing my screen, Jimmy, and then it's yours.
Thank you, Jill. Thanks, Chris, for that. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So I'm going to come at this from a slightly different perspective. So what Chris has given a really nice overview of the commitment of the public sector to engage with SMEs, and there's a lot of this going on, and it's really good. And Jill has outlined in terms of the commitment around the Go for Growth. I'm going to come at this from quite a practical level in terms of what the Go for Growth program is and what it is. And I'm going to show you the free tool that is available to you to use for as long as you like, in terms of helping you get your head around actually how we can actually engage in the public sector and respond to this. And I was reflecting as I was listening to both Jill and Chris speak, a couple of things that popped into my head. One of them was Chris was talking about social value as a focus, but that's only one of the things that there's a big push on. So we've got social value as a concept, we've got GDPR, cyber security, modern slavery is going to find its way as a consideration from over 35 million to smaller businesses. We'll start to get asked questions. Decarbonisation, Chris mentioned, which is going to be huge in terms of its impact. So one of the challenges, if you're a smaller business like I am, in terms of a micro business, is how do I keep my head on and juggle all of these things in terms of what's going on, what the requirements are. So we've got the sort of content side of that. But then the other side actually that we challenge with the smaller businesses is actually how do we understand the process? How does it work? What are they looking for? What are the steps I take? Because the more I understand the process and what the requirements are, the greater the chance of being successful. And that's what I've certainly learned from my experience entering the public sector tendering process. The more I understand what needs to be done, how I best write it, how they're going to score it, that actually helps me at a really practical level. And it's with those two things in mind that this Go for Growth program was developed. And there's two parts of the program before I show you the tool itself. One is the software platform, which is obviously free. It's all free, the whole program. The software platform, which you can use, and I'll tell you about what that's about in a moment. And the second part of the program is training events, webinars, access to materials and resources, which once again are all freely available. But what I'd like to do is show you the platform we've developed to give you an overview of how we think it can help you think about either start to work with the public sector if you're not doing already, but if you are already working with the public sector as a subcontractor and you want to improve what you're doing, then actually you can use this to do a gap analysis, a review of your readiness, if you like, to either escalate the contracts you win or work with the sector. This was put together by groups of SMEs. This whole project was put together by groups of SMEs, the public sector and the Federation of Small Businesses were key to actually doing this. And what we're delivering is this free tool. And I'm just going to take you through what this does, because I think it'll pick up some of the questions that were asked. And one of the questions was in the chat was, how do I find opportunities? How do I know they're coming along? The other questions that we need to be asking is, what policies do I need? How do I demonstrate competence and financial credibility? So these 6 areas down on the left here, finding, understand opportunities, competence, financial credibility, policies, actually preparing the bids, giving myself a best chance. And actually, if I'm a smaller business and I want to start looking at larger contracts and I don't feel I can do them myself, then how do I develop those partnerships? And I think some of those areas you'll already be well developed in terms of partnerships and collaboration and networking. So this tool, as I said, is there and available. You register the tool, you go to a web link, you register, and then you're sent an email, so your data is protected, and obviously all of the GDPR issues are in place. So what I'm going to do is just take you through what the tool does. So I've already registered, as you can see. I'm signed in as Jimmy at Net Positive Futures, and I'm going to just work through the tool to show you how I hope it can help you think about working with the public sector. So the tool is set out over the 3 areas, 3 stages. So firstly, about you, so in terms of who you are, what you do, then looking at sort of the impact areas in terms of, and I'll come on to that, in terms of the areas you might want to develop, refresh your understanding, find out more, and then lastly, an action plan. So there's only 3 steps. And on the first page, the About You section, and I've got test in there, but I can actually so what I put my organization name in, size and turnover of the business, where I'm located, so it's just simple drop down boxes, what type of business I am, what do I supply, products, services, works, both, main commodity codes, because once again, this is important for the public sector to be aware of when they're inviting people to tender. Whether I've already committed to some concept of growth, if you like, in the organization. And is there someone responsible for that? And what actually level are people looking for? They just want to get started, or they're already doing it and they just want to improve. So go back to the point I made earlier, thinking about how you might want to just refresh, or you're starting from the beginning in terms of working for the public sector. So some EDI questions in terms of consideration of a BME, female-led company, and then we ask questions around whether you've worked with the public sector before. So actually, once again, just locating where you are on the journey, and then there's some questions at the end in terms of trading, whether you're a member of FSB and a member of the Chamber of Commerce. We ask these questions for 2 reasons. So I want to be really clear and really open. 2 reasons we want to ask these questions. One is because then we can shape what people are presented with later on in the tool, so we can customize the potential actions you can take depending on whether you're reviewing, whether you're updating, whether you're just starting, for example. And secondly, we're able to just cut the data sets in the future to actually identify where we need to provide more help. So actually, if people are a certain type of businesses in a certain category struggling with a certain issue in the tendering process, we at the Go for Growth team will just be able to then provide that support and target that engagement. So we hope none of this is particularly commercially confidential, and I hope you'd agree with that, because we don't want any of this to be a barrier to actually using the tool. And once people have actually filled in that data, they click in your impact. So what we do here is, at the start of the tool, you saw there was a list of issue areas that we know from the research and being small businesses that people sometimes struggle with. And we've already had on today, how do I find out what opportunities exist? So what we've done is we've categorized it in 6 areas. And this is a bit of a gap analysis. This is the opportunity for you and your colleagues in the business, because you can do this together, to actually say, well, what do we know about working with the public sector? Are we ready? What might that look like for our business? So what happens is for each of the sections, when you open up your tool the first time, for each of the sections, all of the issues are below the line. And what you actually do is scroll down on the issues and you find out, you identify the issues might be suitable for you. So I'm just going to select a few there. And for each of those issues, what we do is try to provide a bit more information in terms of what this is about. If you change your mind, you can delete it. And if there was an issue that wasn't there, but you were particularly interested in, you could add an issue, and that will tell us at Go for Growth that maybe there's an issue that people are concerned about that we can start to do some research on or support. So what you do is you identify the range of issues that are pertinent to you, you can prioritize them, and do a bit of a gap analysis. And that's just around in terms of finding and understanding opportunities. What we've also got is the other areas that are absolutely critical in terms of winning work from the public sector. So in terms of how do we demonstrate competence? Have we got enough testimonials? Do we market effectively? How do we demonstrate social value as a part of what we do? What license requirements have we have? So we've identified a number of issues that might be pertinent to your sector, your piece of your area of work. And once again, in terms of the process is about identifying these issues. It's a bit of a materiality analysis. It's a bit of saying, actually, in my business where we are now, I'm not sure what size of contract we should bid for. So actually, can I get a bit more support on that? Can I get some guidance? So by identifying these issues, what you're saying, in effect, for your business, for you, not for us, for you, what you're saying is actually, I want to have a look at this area in a bit more detail. And the process is to go through each of these areas and identify the sorts of issues that you think, actually, if I do a bit more on that, it will help. So you go through that process, and once you've been through that process and identify the issues that you think are relevant for your business, then you generate an action plan. So what we've done is for every issue that we've identified as part of our research, as part of Jill's experience, my experience of going through this process and working with public sector, working with the public sector as part of this, what we've actually done is identified actions we know will potentially help actually you address this issue. And we haven't just said, right, it's this one action. And the reason we haven't said it's just this one action is because actually all businesses are slightly different and also have their own culture and behavior and like to do things in a different way. So we have a range of actions that you might want to choose and progress. And what we've really tried to do, actually, and as you'll see, we've really tried to, where there's an action, we haven't just said, yes, go away and do that. Jill mentioned the language earlier. She mentioned about all of the different terms in procurement. What do they mean? Overdue, below, above, thresholds. What does all this mean? Well, we've produced a glossary of terms to help you with that. Understanding the rules and how to apply them. So once again, if there's guidance out there that exists that we believe is good, what we do is we link you off to that guidance and support. Where we actually think the portals exist, so find a tender, so you can find out where all public sector contracts are, which deals with one of the questions that was asked earlier. You can find training on portals. So what we've done is really over lockdown, this has been our fun task, which is actually develop guidance linked to lots of actions that we believe will help address these issues. And what you're able to do is use this, explore the guidance and say, well, actually, I think we're progressing on this. So we need a bit more work, but we're progressing on this. And what we're going to do is link that to one of our internal documents, or just to add the evidence. This is where we are in terms of progress on this issue. So what you're able to do is customize. You can add, delete. Actually, we need a better business plan. Our business plan's time for a refresh. Lots of business plans are time. It's time for a refresh. Mid post COVID, however you want to describe it. I've never seen more new business plans and strategies being developed in my life as have been developed in the past starting over the past few months. Every organisation is fundamentally looking at how do we do things differently in this current context? How has it influenced my business strategy? And if I'm going to do that, what we're saying here is actually there's guidance on what you can include if your business plan needs a refresh, because actually having a robust business plan is good to present to the public sector. And actually in this new context, I might need some HR advice, which is available. So as you can see, across all of the areas, we've suggested actions which you can delete, add, but we've tried to link to lots of resources that either already existed or we've developed in plain English to help people. So in terms of the action plan, you review that, and I selected a lot of issues for illustrative purposes. But what you're also able to do within your business, if you have multiple sites, or there's 2 or 3 people who are involved in the tendering process, your growth team, if you like, or it's normally the director plus one other who does this, then actually you can share the link to the tool with your colleagues. So the plan you develop is a shared plan across your colleagues. So it's not one person doing it in isolation. You could share it with the whole team if it's a smaller business. When we're looking at, when we do this as a small business, when we're tendering, then there's the 3 of us in the business, we all do it together. So what we do is we share the link and we do the review together to get our plan. So in summary, it's a free tool which allows you to do a bit of a gap analysis of where you are in terms of being ready to not only tender and win contracts, but then deliver those contracts and work with the public sector. That's the first thing it tries to do. The second thing it tries to do is actually help you understand what the requirements are, and where you don't understand or new to you, it's actually about providing you with information, links to resources, sample action plans to help you get that understanding. So it's the gap analysis. It's also helping you with the materials and understanding. And by doing that, also what we're doing with the team is helping you through training, support, and other requirements to raise your profile with the public sector. I've already had I'm going to stop there for a moment. I'll stop the share. But I just also want to say to you that this morning I've had an email from one of the case studies, Jill, of the companies that have already started using the tool, saying actually which public sector organisations are engaged, how do we go about raising our profile with them? Because what we're trying to do is not only help businesses, and it's a genuine offer of help for businesses to get their head round what it might look like working with the public sector, but I know what something Jill's really passionate about is about that visibility of those smaller businesses. Because from a social value point of view, and I've not touched on that, and it's part of my background, I would argue really strongly that the smaller businesses inherently deliver more social value than the larger businesses, but the public sector is still struggling to understand exactly what that looks like. Not Chris, I hasten to add. So actually, I think we can articulate our narrative in terms of social value contribution at the heart of what we do. And for me, what the work Jill's leading on and I'm supporting on Go for Growth is a really nice tool just to start that process if you haven't done it before. And if you have done it before, how can we get better? Because what is true is the public sector is committed to working with SMEs. So the more we can make ourselves visible to them in a professional way, and I think the tool helps us do this, then the better. I want to stop there and see if there's any questions or chat, if that's okay. Any?
So I've answered a question in the chat already in terms of the scope of Go for Growth. So is it just South Yorkshire based or anywhere? And so I've confirmed that any business anywhere in the UK can join Go for Growth should they want to. I'm conscious that we've got 6 minutes left, and I do want to open up for questions. But the final thing that we wanted to just share was some case studies, and there are 3. I won't share all 3, but I'll just pick one. So this is an organisation called Office Odyssey, and Jimmy, jump in because I know you did this case study. They are a social enterprise and a smaller organisation delivering inkjet cartridges, sustainable inkjet cartridges, dedicating some profits to their social mission, but they're predicated on employability for people with autism and other learning disabilities. And they were just really struggling with scaling their business in the public sector, building on their experience and understanding how they could put together their tenders to give them the best possible chance. And so their actions out of the Go for Growth tool were around their accreditations, understanding how to demonstrate social value, developing that case study environment, being clear about their capability, etc. One of the things that Go for Growth does with and for the public sector is around taking the intelligence that businesses tell us around the issues and barriers that exist and helping the public sector get that intelligence. So Chris, for example, in Barnsley, he really wants to know what businesses who want to work for Barnsley are finding difficult in that process. And so he can use that intelligence to build into the front end processes, and it's evidence-based. So it can flow into each public sector organisation strategy planning, and as Chris says, there's some really good practice going on, but it can be tailored then specifically around the issues that are being identified, which is definitely a positive. Go for Growth is a community as well. It's a program, but it's more than just a program. We have a Facebook community, and what we hope is that the businesses in the program will stay in the program and stay in the community long after they have mitigated and resolved some of the issues and barriers, to chat, to share, to talk to each other, to grow together with other businesses, and potentially to form partnerships and working collaborations going forward. In the interest of time, I'm going to resist the temptation to waffle any longer. There are our contact details on the screen for myself, for Jimmy, and for Chris. If you would like to register for the programme, it is there. The presentation slides will be issued, and all 3 case studies will come out with the presentation slides. So in the last minute or so, if there are any questions from anybody to any of us, then please do feel free.
Can I just add one more thing while people are just thinking?
Of course.
And in terms of who's this for, obviously everyone on this webinar is totally go and log on, go and have a look at the tool and see whether you like it. There's nothing to lose. Have a look. You might work in other communities, so you might be part of, you might have colleagues or friends who run small businesses and are going through the same sort of thinking. By all means, send the link to other businesses you know. If you work in partnership with a couple, send it to that. There's no limit here. If you're an SME looking to do this, then actually send it to your networks as well, and colleagues. I'll sort of give it Julia.
Just a quick question. During the presentation, you mentioned that there's going to be drop-in sessions and workshops for businesses. How do they find out about those? The website's just getting finalised now, Julia. So that'll go out, and there'll be a list of the dates on that, and where people have actually registered on Go for Growth and are using the tool. We'll also do email reminders on the webinar dates, where they are, what they are, the content, and the same as everyone's doing these days, they'll be recorded and made available. But it'll be through the website, and through, if you register for the tool, you'll automatically be informed. I'll tell you what we won't be doing, if I'm honest. What we won't be doing is bombarding you with emails, It'll be really focused. When we think there's something of value, we'll be doing that. As I said, I don't like that myself, so it'll be just nice and focused. So that's how you'll find out. Any other sort of thoughts and questions? Okay. Well, I mean, I'll say my last words and then hand back to Shane or Jill. But from my point of view, we develop this because we're small businesses and we want to work and help other small businesses. So if you use it and you don't like it, or if you use it and you don't think it's got value, tell us. That's what I'd say to you. Tell us. But I think I would also say, and you can probably tell the sort of person I am, it's worth having a go and having a look at, because there's a lot of resources in there. And even if you use it to register, to develop an action plan, and you don't go back for 6 months, that's all right. But I think it's there to be used. And I'll stop there, Shane.
No, brilliant. And thank you very much. Gillian, do you just want to come back to the main screen? Is that all right?
Yeah, it is. There we go.
So kind of next steps going forward, and well, just before I go into that, I just want to say I personally think it's a brilliant platform, a brilliant program, and if you are experienced in working with the public sector or brand new to it or wanting to dip your toe in it, I think it's perfect for various levels where you are in terms of that stage process, really. So a big thank you to Jimmy and to Gillian for sharing that with us, and a huge thank you to Chris from Barnsley Council for spending time with us this morning. And if there's no other questions, what I'll do, I'll just lead on to the next steps, really. So I'll be sending an email, a follow-up email to all delegates with the contact details on there in case you missed it from Gillian's final slide. And then I'll also be popping a link on for the Go for Growth so you can click straight on and start using it and accessing it. So if there's, from Barnsley and Rotherham Chambers perspective, thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. Gillian, is there any comments that you want to make, or should we close it there?
No, just to say thank you to everyone for joining. Thank you, Chris, for coming along and telling us what Barnsley are doing, and thank you for organising it, Shane. It's been great. Thank you very much.
No problem. And thanks to you guys for joining us this morning. It's been good to see everyone. So we shall see you soon at the Chamber, and take care. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.